Hello and welcome to the Westcity Church podcast. If you'd like to get to know us more, find us at westcitychurch.com.au. We really hope that you're encouraged by today's message.
Hi everyone. For who haven't met me yet, my name is Giannis, and Phil asked me to share today a bit about, my journey and what it means for me to come to the table. My background is I was born into a Greek Orthodox family, and long story short, I have been baptized last year in November here in this church, and Phil was the one who baptized me as well, and and I was just sort of thinking, what do I share? And I kept calling Phil, and I was like, what do I have to say, Phil? Like, what do you want me to say? And he was like, just share something about your story. And thank goodness I went through something the last 9 weeks, which I'm just going to share a quick story, I guess. And 9 weeks ago was when I started to have sort of like a health challenge, and I was going from being fit, waking up 3:30 every day, going to the gym, to like the last 9 weeks I haven't been once to the gym. And when you sort of get fit to about 80%, you drop down, you're like 4 days, 5 days sick in bed. It sort of starts to play with your mind a little bit, and you get like a lot of bad thoughts, and it's like you hold it inside of you, and it sort of grows in the dark, if that makes sense. And so I just kept calling Phil and saying what was going on, and I had a kind of people in my support team as well, and just kept talking with them. And I remember about 3 weeks ago, I started to pray every morning before I go to work and just ask for protection. And so I was like, okay, maybe I just start to read a bit from the Bible before going to work. And I did a prayer and like, hey, Lord, what do you want me to take with me, to start the day? And every day, for some strange reason, I opened the book, and it was I don't know the verse from the book, and it was about from Psalms, and it was about a prayer of protection. And so every morning before I went to work, I would read this prayer out loud, and then during the day, I sort of noticed myself start to talk to myself, like subconsciously. Every time I had like a bad thought coming in the head, like, oh, you can't do it. It's like, no, shut up, Yanni, you can do it. Like, you don't owe me. I got this. And I guess to put this together, like coming to the table, it's like being intentional about my time with the Lord, and just thanking Him for what I had to go through in the past, and just express my gratitude, because I guess when we are sort of in peak in life, it's easy to forget about what we have and what God has done to help us basically move up the mountain. And then once you come down, all of a sudden, and you are sort of stuck in your own misery, it's like, please help me get out of here, And like maybe 2 weeks now, I'm already like on the way to get better again. Next week, I hope I can go back to the gym. But just coming to the table, it's like, for me, spend my time with the Lord, being very intentional to thank Him what I've been going through, but also set my intention for the future, so that the next time I come back to the table, I can share my journey with Him. And obviously, I know He's got me, and He's got every one of us. So thank you.
How nice to be here. Oh, hold on, I was here last week. But it's still nice to be here. Josh was just talking about the theme. And it is important, actually, to think about the theme of the whole of the Bible. What Jesus said about Himself, and what the witness of Scripture says about Jesus, is that He fulfilled the law and the prophets. So the idea is that there is something about Jesus that fulfills all that came before. Now, that's a really big statement. But as you read through the books of the Bible, there's hints at that all the way through. And this morning we're going to have a look at, I guess, one of those hints that comes out of one of the prophetic books of the Bible, Joshua, but something that I think, makes us really think and consider what it is to be a Christian in the context of this rather big and sometimes quite confusing book that we call the Bible. Anyway, do you want to put the first slide on? Picture taken at the Great Wall of China. Has no particular relevance except it's a nice picture. And perhaps in some ways it reminds me of the fact that as we speak right now, we're in Wembley in Western Australia. The person that I was with is on a Greek island. Her name's Kelly, and I'm pretty jealous. Have you been watching her Facebook, by the way, any of you who knows Kelly? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Yes, thank you. Thank you. Hopefully she won't listen to this podcast. Well, she won't, will she? Because she's probably on a yacht somewhere. Anyway, have you ever heard the term exceptionalism? It's kind of, it means matchless, and it means there's something about me and my achievements that can't be matched. It's sort of when the normal desire to be seen as successful, which, by the way, is a very normal and very appropriate thing, when it kind of tips over into I'm more successful than anybody else, and it all too often winds up meaning better than anyone else. Back in the day, many, many years ago, I was in a church movement, and we had a couple of expressions. And we had like a confession that we used to speak, and it went something like this: I'm the head and not the tail. I'm above and not beneath. Not below. I'm on top and not beneath. I'm going over, not going under. Now it was well intentioned because it was intended to combat like a poor self-image that sometimes we as Christians used to have. This kind of, we used to call it the worm mentality. But unfortunately, humans all too often, it ends up as someone else being the tail, because I'm not the tail, but someone else is. I'm the head, that means somebody's, it's always this binary kind of, I'm exceptional and you're not. And the you can be lots of kinds of people. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. My middle son has a close buddy named Cooper. And when Cooper was a kid, they're 28 years old now. When he was a kid, whenever he did something that was really good, or he won something, he won a card game. I remember being down south once and he won a game of 500. And he jumped up and he said, I'm the king of the world. Now, it was always very cute because he was saying, I feel great about myself. But what he didn't mean was that everyone else was a loser. Christian exceptionalism can be like that. You kind of mix Donald Trump and the Bible, and it sort of becomes fake news. This is, by the way, not a political statement at all. I mean, really, it's this way that we can, if we're not careful, we can look at the Bible and we end up thinking that we're somehow this exceptional group and everybody else isn't. And I know this is Westcity, and I know that we're not naturally like that, because of the way that Phil is and the way that Westcity has been. But honestly, I still have to watch myself all the time. I sent a picture of myself to somebody yesterday. I'd just been on a 10K run. And I was walking back into my apartment, and there was like a glass window, and I saw my calves. Now, I didn't mean to see them. They were just there. And to be honest with you, they're hard to miss. But look, and I found myself taking a photograph and sending it to someone. and saying, oh, I just accidentally took a photograph of my calf. Anyway, his response back to me was something like, oh, get over yourself. So we're looking at the Bible today, though. And to be clear, I'm not talking about being positive or happy about success. All right? I think that living a flourishing life is actually at the heart of being human. And something actually we should strive for. I really do. I think success is a really, really good thing. So please don't misunderstand me. I just think we've got to be really careful that it doesn't come at the expense of humility, I guess. So we're looking at the Bible today, and put up the second slide. J.S. Wales said this a long time ago. He said, when he talked about the Bible, he said, it's not about the easy optimism or dark pessimism, it's about radical realism. And I think that's something to bear in mind when we talk about the Bible. When you read the Bible, you're going to find a whole bunch of stuff that fits nicely in with our stereotyped view of what it is to be a believer. But then there's a bunch of stuff that just does not. It doesn't fit. Because the Bible is radically real about life, actually. And part of the thing about reading it and part of the thing about being a part of living the truth in it is to be able to realise that it's not trying to be overly optimistic or darkly pessimistic, it's trying to be real about actually living as a human being on this earth rather than skipping out of being a human being and trying to be somewhere else. Because we don't actually get to do that. Well, sooner or later we do, I guess. So the prophetic and the historical books tell a story of mixed success and failure. They tell both, actually. And that's actually a good thing. It's as it should be because we're people, and that's how it is for human people. In the Bible, that failure is often described as a turning away from God, and it's also described as a looking down on others. That's in many ways how failure is presented in the Bible. It's not presented in our kind of binary, I made money, I didn't, I conquered this or I didn't. It's more about character. If you have a look at virtue ethics, you'll see that there is this idea that living a virtuous life is actually more about the character that you build in your life, rather than the stuff that you do. Okay. So the book of Joshua does tell about the conquest of the promised land. We're going to have a look just at 3 or 4 verses this morning together. In the end, beginning at Jericho, the Bible does present the exceptional achievement of taking the promised land. And it is described as a picture of human flourishing, unless, of course, you were living there. Then not so much. If you were actually living in the promised land before the conquering. But that's a story for another day. What I want to discuss is what happened just before the Jericho incident and the conquering of the promised land, because it's pretty flipping amazing. So it's just a little while before. Doesn't make it clear exactly how long, but probably just a day or two before the actual going into the land. And I've got it up. I'm going to read 2 verses. I'm going to read the rest of it from here. When Joshua, was near Jericho. I can't even read it, and I haven't got it here. Hold on. Oh, there we go. When Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua approached him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" Now, so picture the context here. They're just about to invade the land, and he's looking for a confirmation, an affirmation that he and his group are doing the right thing and that God's going to be on their side, right? So let's have a look at the next verse. The man replied, "Neither No, neither. I am here as captain of the army of the Lord. So the man replies, neither. This is weird. The captain of the army of the Lord and Joshua, the leader of the people of Israel, who's going to conquer the land, says to get some confirmation so that it's okay for him to go about and do what he's planning to do, that God's going to be with him. He says, okay, basically he's saying this. So is God for us or for them? This is a rhetoric question. And he gets the response, neither. Let me read the next verse. Joshua prostrated himself in homage and said, what have you to say to your servant, my lord? The captain of the Lord's army answered, remove your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Something's going on here that shouldn't be missed, in my view. When people do something really great or beautiful or selfless, I've often heard something like, oh, that action was not of this world. It was beyond human in some way. When actually it was the very best of being human. We have this very strange view sometimes that there is this black and white picture of life and that everything out there is dark and everything that in here, meaning us, is light. And it's just not true. It's just not true. And verses like this, I think deliberately, are designed to stop us for 1 minute and make us think about maybe God does not have the same view as our exceptionalist view of ourselves because we happen to be part of a religious thing that has been in charge for a long time. Now, that's not me being a lefty, genuinely. That's me hopefully being a biblicist. That's me hopefully reading the Bible for all it's worth, our last theme. And allowing myself to be challenged. Karl Barth said that God will speak to us through, many ways Karl Barth talked about, but one of them being the Bible. But we've got to flip and listen and not gloss over it as though it's just saying something that we want to hear all the time. I'm speaking to myself when I say that. Joshua has a baseline humility, a recognition that life is way more mysterious than winners and losers, that there's something holy going on. It's like God is saying, I'm for everybody or nobody. You don't get to decide, Joshua. You don't get to decide who I'm for or who I'm not for. I'm not for either of you. There's something actually holy about me that transcends all this stuff. Now, I actually think that's probably a really good thing to have in your mind when you're about to take something on. That whatever I take on in my life, whatever I'm getting onto, whatever I'm moving towards, I can never do it in a way which puts me on top. It's just not the biblical way. But I know, and look, I've been there, seriously, I've been there many, many times, but I know that it is the way that we take it on sometimes. Because we're human and we live in this kind of human world where there's winners and losers and, look, I don't want to blame culture and society for that. In fact, we're going to talk about it in a minute. That a guy named René Girard, who's a Christian philosopher, who's died now, actually did talk about this in a really interesting way. And we're just going to talk about it for a sec. So if God isn't for one over the other, then who's he for? What are you saying, Chiz? Famous guy, Rowan Williams. I'm going to read a quote. Forgive me. You still with me, by the way? I've not confused you yet? Yeah? Oh, that's good because I confused myself. So maybe afterwards you'd be able to help me out with it. I think these things are so important. Rowan Williams talks about what it is to be humans. Rowan Williams was the Archbishop of Canterbury. He is, for those of you who don't know, he's a strong Christian, kind of in the middle. He's not left or right. He's not conservative or liberal. He's kind of in the middle. And he said a couple of things about being human. And I think this is important stuff. So I'm just going to read these couple of quotes. Behind all this lies one very basic theological assumption. Goes back at least as far as St. Augustine at the beginning of the 5th century. The assumption is that before anything or anyone is in relation with anything or anyone else, it's in relation to God. And the deeper I go into the attempt to understand myself, who and what I am, the more I find that I am already grasped, addressed, engaged with. I can't dig deep enough in myself to find an abstract self that's completely divorced from this relationship. In the Christian tradition, before anything else happens, I am in relation to a non-worldly, non-historical, everlasting attention and love, which is God. So in other words, the Bible talks about this all the way through. But what Williams is saying is that before we can talk about anything else when it comes to being human, we have to understand that there is a baseline connection. We're already grasped by a loving God. And he goes on to say, of course, when I look around, my neighbour is also always somebody who is already in relation with God before they're in relation with me. That means that there's a very serious limit. I love this Anglican phraseology. That means that there's a very serious limit on my freedom to make of my neighbour what I choose. Because to put it very bluntly, they don't belong to me. And their relation to me is not all that is true of them, or even the most important thing that is true of them. That's true for everything in the world in a certain sense, which is one reason why there's a good Christian ground for being concerned about the environment. So what he's saying is, and if I could just speak for God, just for a moment, why is it that God is not okay about favoritism? Why is it that God is not okay about having one group over the other? Why is it that God is not okay about our value judgment about one group of people compared to another group of people, who always seems to be us, by the way? Is because what God is saying is, you don't understand that I have grasped them just like I grasped you. That I am for them just as I am for you. That there is an equity in my nature that is really hard for a human to catch hold of sometimes. Nevertheless, we should. Girard called it scapegoating, and what he said was that there's something in the human psyche that wants to be able to team up against a common enemy. That there's something about being human that tends towards making somebody bad so that then we can feel good about ourselves. Put up the next slide. Diversity is just a genocidal scam. That's from a rally in the United States. It's not that, you see, here's the thing. It's not that you shouldn't question certain left-wing notions about diversity. It's not that you shouldn't question stuff. It's not that we shouldn't go, "Oh, I don't know about that, or actually I feel a little bit differently about that. It's this second bit. It's a genocidal scam. See, it's this desire that we so often have, that I certainly do, that I want to say, here's how I feel, and it's against you because you're wrong. The next slide. I love this one. I've shown this one before. This is actually a slide from the 1980s, and it's actually a slide about liberation theology, if you wanted to go all academic about it. But what I love about it is it's this misconception of Jesus with the rifle. And now let me give you the actual context. What it's saying in liberation theology is we need to get about righting the wrongs, and we need to do it in any way that we have to do it, because we're called to equality, so we need to make equality happen. This is in a liberation theology context from the South America, actually. But I love it because it just keeps reminding me that that's what I used to do. Hopefully I do it less now. I weaponize Christ. What Girard would say is that the church is the place where the answer should be to this. The church actually should be the place where we don't live like this. The church should be the place where we truly are colourblind, where we truly don't live in this way. We have to really work at it, because it actually isn't easy to do. Because I actually think Girard's right, and I'm not trying to have some big philosophical answer to life's problems here, but I think there is some stuff about being human. And I know some theologians would say, oh, it's about the fallenness, and you know what, there's a lot of talk about it, but what I would say is this. There is this natural tendency in all of us, you and me, to want to be exceptional, and part of that process as a human seems to nearly always be to do it by demonising someone else. It's certainly a risk. And I think it's one of the reasons why this weird bunch of scripture is put just before the conquest of Canaan. I think it's super interesting at the very least, right? Because all that comes after it is very problematic and very difficult to understand, and I still haven't figured it out, okay? But it does give me heart when I read the captain of the armies of the Lord saying, well, I'm not for either of you, actually. And in fact, let's get things right here. This is holy ground, and you just need to actually be thinking about that. So I don't think there's any room in Christian thought for scapegoating. I'm just finally finishing off here. Karl Barth talked about National Socialism in the time of the Second World War, got chucked out of Germany as a result, Swiss guy. What he said was National Socialism has a theological problem. He said the Nazis have a theological problem. Yes. And what he meant was they misunderstood the Bible. The Bible doesn't pit one group of humans against another. The Bible doesn't say one group is more important than the other, which was this basis of National Socialism. And the theological problem with scapegoating is the same. So, what do I take out of that? Out of that sort of confusing mass of ideas. And as we read the Bible, what can I get out of that? Well, I want to have a flourishing life. I want to be successful. Don't you? I do. I really do. Now I'm 64. I've still got a few years left. And I'd like them to be successful years. I'd like to have a flourishing life. And I think it's a very, very beautiful thing. And I think that the scripture does tell us that that's also what God would like for human beings as well. So I think I can strive for that and feel like I'm living a life of a believer. I do think I've got the seeds of greatness in me, and I think I have a God-given desire, as you do, to live a good life. But just not at the expense of someone else, and not at the expense of my character. If I get ahead, it's not because I've got more value than those who don't get ahead quite so much. And maybe finally and thoughtfully and meditatively for me, I'm on holy ground when I make nobody everybody. That's when I'm on holy ground. When I know that I'm no better or worse than anybody else. That I stand in relation to God, and so does everyone else. Whether they know it or not, it doesn't change the relational nature of that, the acceptance of that, the complete embrace of that. And so, just finally then, I'm a bit of a lefty, okay? And I do get really angry at anti-rhetoric, especially when it's Christian, right? Just being honest, right? Josh will know this. Anybody who knows me will know this, and be annoyed by it. I find it really difficult. Anti-gay, anti-this, anti-that, anti-trans, anti-flippin' everything. I find it really hard, but for lots of reasons. I think it's theologically very poor scholarship. I also think it's just hateful. I do. However, when I start putting myself above, I'm doing the same thing. Doing exactly the same thing. That's what I mean by it's a challenge for me every day. As it happens, my challenge is not to stop looking down on people who are different than me. My challenge is to stop looking down on people who are holding genuine beliefs that I really don't agree with. So chill out about it and just live the life, be on holy ground. I want to try to do that. So whether I'm in a shop or I'm in a university or I'm in a church or I'm in a, I was gonna say a Satanist meeting, but I thought that might be going too far. Interestingly, by the way, a friend of mine showed me part of a documentary which really opened my mind about the Christian right in America. It's really genuine, guys. And even when we find it really, really difficult, when we brush up against our right-wing neighbours and our Christian friends who have a right-wing approach and would vote for Trump if they were in America, please, I'm speaking to myself, don't forget that being on holy ground means God has them just like he has me. And so we can walk together and disagree, can't we? And still show the character that Jesus shows. So, there's my encouragement.
How good was that message? Thank you so much for joining us. Each week at West City, we say a benediction together. We do this because we believe that the purpose of the church is to be a caring community for the world, and that as we go and serve others, we enter into Christ's work of welcome, restoration and healing, both for us and others. We believe that in doing so, we get to see and encounter Christ. So let's say the benediction together. We come together as the church to be reminded of the go of Christ. So we will go out and feed the hungry, go out and clothe the naked, go out and fight for justice, go out and end oppression, go out and proclaim anew the old story, go out and associate with those who don't look like us, think like us, act like us, and don't even like us. And we'll do it all in the name of the one who sent us. His name is Jesus.